Hi friends, it's Miss Lori. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy, and I hope that you're all enjoying the winter weather that we're having. We've been talking a lot about winter weather and animals in the winter, and I thought we would read one of my favorite stories today about animals in the winter, and this is called The Mitten, and it's written and illustrated by Jan Brett. And we know that somebody who writes the story is called... That's right, the author. The author writes the story. The author writes the story. Hi-ho the dairy-o, the author writes the story. And it's illustrated by Jan Brett, which means that somebody who draws the pictures is called... That's right, the illustrator. The illustrator draws the pictures. The illustrator draws the pictures. Hi-ho the dairy-o, the illustrator draws the pictures. The Mitten. Once there was a boy named Nicky who wanted his new mittens made from wool as white as snow. What color did he want his mittens? That's right, he wanted them white. At first, his grandmother, Baba, did not want to knit white mittens. If you drop one in the snow, she warned, you'll never find it. But Nicky wanted snow-white mittens, and finally, Baba made them. So, what color mittens did he have? That's right, white. After she finished, she said, "When you come home, first I will look to see if you are safe and sound, and then I will look to see if you still have your snow-white mittens." So off Nicky went, and it wasn't long until one of his new mittens dropped in the snow and was left behind. Do you think he'll be able to find it? Let's see. A mole, tired from tunneling along, discovered the mitten and burrowed inside. It was cozy and warm and just the right size, so he decided to stay. So now inside the mitten to keep warm is the mole. A snowshoe rabbit came hopping by. He stopped for a moment to admire his winter coat. It was then that he saw the mitten and wiggled in, feet first. The mole didn't think there was room for both of them, but when he saw the rabbit's big kickers, he moved in. Now there's a mole and a rabbit inside, trying to stay warm. Next, a hedgehog came snuffling along. Having spent the day looking under wet leaves for things to eat, he decided to move into the mitten and warm himself. The mole and the rabbit were bumped and jostled, but not being ones to argue with someone covered with prickles, they made room. Now, who's in the mitten? The mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog are all trying to stay warm. As soon as the hedgehog disappeared into the mitten, a big owl, attracted by the commotion, swooped down. When he decided to move in also, the mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog grumbled, but when they saw the owl's glinty talons, they quickly let him in. So now, who's in the mitten trying to stay warm? There's a mole, a rabbit, a hedgehog, and an owl. Up through the snow appeared a badger. He eyed the mitten and began to climb in. The mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, and the owl were not pleased. There was no room left. But then they saw his diggers. They gave him the thumb. Now, in the mitten is the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, the badger, and let's see who comes along. It started snowing, but the animals were snug in the mitten. A waft of warm steam rose in the air, and a fox trotting by stopped to investigate. Just the sight of the cozy mitten made him feel drowsy. The fox poked his muzzle in. When the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, and the badger saw his shiny teeth, they gave the fox lots of room. So now, who's trying to stay warm inside this mitten? That's right, the mole, the rabbit, hedgehog, owl, the badger, and now the fox. Let's see who comes along. A great bear lumbered by. He spied the mitten, all plumped up, not being one to be left out in the cold. Let's see, do you think there's enough room for him? He began to nose his way in. The animals were packed in as tightly as could be. But what animal would argue with a bear? The mitten swelled and stretched. It was pulled and bulged, too many times its size. But Baba's good knitting held fast. Let's see what happens. Along came a meadow mouse, no bigger than an acorn. She wriggled into the one space left and made herself comfortable on top of the great bear's nose. So now, who's inside this mitten? The mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, an owl, a badger, a fox, a bear, and now a tiny mouse. The bear, tickled by the mouse's whiskers, gave an enormous sneeze. Ah, ah, achoo! The force of the sneeze shot the mitten up into the sky and scattered the animals in all directions. On his way home, Nicky saw a white shape in the distance. It was the lost mitten, silhouetted against the blue sky. As he ran to catch his snow-white mitten, he saw Baba's face in the window. First, she looked to see if he was safe and sound, and then she saw he had his new white mittens. And that's the end. And it's important to keep track of our things when we're outside and around the house. It's important that we make sure that we don't lose them. And Nicky was lucky to find his mitten. And some activities that you can do along with the story will be posted on Google Classroom. And one activity that you can do is you can make your own mitten with animals. And to do that, you'll need 2 sets of mittens that you will glue together like this. And you'll leave an opening at the bottom. You'll also be getting animals to color in. After you color in the animals, you can make them into puppets with popsicle sticks. So the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, the badger, the fox, the bear, and the mouse. Then you could recreate the story. So first came a mole, and he found the mitten, and the mole thought it was a good place to keep warm, so he went inside the mitten. Next came a rabbit, and he too wanted a place to keep warm, So he went and joined the mole inside this mitten. Then along comes the hedgehog. And the hedgehog, he wanted to keep warm for the winter too. And he decided to join the mole and the rabbit inside the mitten. Next came an owl. And the owl also wanted to stay warm, so he joined the mole and the rabbit and the hedgehog inside the mitten. Next came a badger. He too wanted to stay warm, and he decided to join the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, and the owl inside the mitten. Next came the fox, and the fox wanted to stay warm for the winter, and he joined the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, the badger inside this mitten. Then came the bear and the other animals, the mole, the rabbit, and hedgehog, owl, the badger, the fox. They couldn't argue with the bear who wanted to join them, so in went the bear. Then came the mouse, and the mouse, he too wanted to join them, and he found the last spot and tickled the bear's nose. And then they all came out of the mitten. And the mitten flew and up into the air, and the animals fell out. So you could recreate your story with the mitten and its animals. Another activity that you will be getting is another mitten. And this mitten, you'll also be getting animals to color in. And you could cut out, once you color in these animals, you could cut out your mitten and animals and glue them onto the mitten so it looks like all the animals are inside the mitten. Another activity that we will be doing is figuring out what we would put in if we had a mitten and what we would put inside the mitten and what's big enough to fit inside the mitten. So it says, my mitten is big enough to fit A, and you will draw a picture of what you think is big enough to fit inside your mitten. For example, you could have a giraffe that is big enough to fit in your mitten. Or maybe an elephant is big enough to fit in your mitten. And I hope that you enjoy these activities and enjoyed hearing the story of the mitten. And I hope to see you all real soon. Bye.